Welcome, everybody, to podcast number 219. Let me ask you a question. Do you know your purpose in life? Do you know what your ultimate purpose statement is? We're going to cover that today. Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody. I hope you're doing well right now. I'm actually being safe because I've got 18 miles to my next turn off. But I'm in Washington State. This is the first time I've been to Washington State, and I'm headed to do a training for scheduling. So super excited about that. Got up at 4 o'clock this morning. Was flying all day yesterday, so I apologize for the podcast being a little bit late. But anyway, there's something that's been on my mind recently that's been really neat that I want to share with you. So for today, I'll skip some of the some of the scaffolding for the podcast and go right into the subject. This will be a shorter little podcast, but I think the reason I actually had one mapped out for this morning with the whole full outline, but this really hit me right away, and I want to get it while it's on my mind and inspired. So, there was a really good friend of mine that said, Jason, you told me a couple weeks ago that you haven't even begun to understand what your purpose in life is and where you want to head. And when he repeated that back to me, I was like, "Ooh, that sounds kind of harsh." But it was true. And the person I'm talking about, I won't tell you his name to conceal the innocent, but the person that I'm talking about has like lightning fast intelligence, so much potential, is a true giver and just wonderful, and didn't know the purpose of his life and how to align it. And that's one example. Another example was helping a company the other day, and I'm not just saying this, like literally a fantastic company, like over the top cool people, was going through with them in an executive offsite to identify basically the vision of their company, which is their purpose, their core values, their mission. Sometimes we add in there the big, hairy, audacious goal, some other things. But in the process of doing that, I found the exercise of asking why 7 times to be really helpful. And when you do that exercise, it's usually plus or minus 3. So if you ask why 5 times in lean construction, it's plus or minus 3. If you can either do it 2 times or you could do it 8 times. I use the ask why 7 times plus or minus 3. So I was asking this business owner why 7 times. I think I got to 8 times, and he was about to punch me in the face because it's so annoying to go through this. But at the end of it all, it was, I do this business to build people and families. And that sounds so weird. It's like so not aligned with, what the company does, what they previously thought, previously aligned core values, things like that. But I was pretty forward. I said, I challenge you to really think about this, because I bet you at the heart of it, that's what it is. And so he decided to let us do it with his executive team, but without giving them the, what we had come up with first. And so he actually took that same technique, and in the executive offsite asked why 7 times. And you'll never guess. Nope. Actually, you probably guessed. They, without any input, came up with the concept that company's purpose was to build people and families. And so I challenged them to keep that as their purpose statement, even though it doesn't align with their actual technical trait. And also with this really good friend of mine, we're going through the purpose statement and asking why 7 times. And it comes to this statement that's kind of close to, to find joy in improving the lives of others. And he appropriately challenged me on that, said, maybe it's just improving the lives of others, maybe it's this. And then we started to use it as a criteria. And I'm not saying that that's the final purpose statement for either of those two examples. It'll probably change. But here's the litmus test, or the test, or the qualifying criteria, right? So we with my friend, we asked the question, if the only criteria was to improve the lives of others, what would that look like? If that was your only criteria, and I came to the conclusion that, he could end up at a company and still be miserable and still be improving the lives of others, or could ignore his family and get a divorce and still improve the lives of others, or end up in a spot where you're not fulfilled. But if the qualifying criteria was changed to find joy in improving the lives of others, the criteria wouldn't allow him to ignore his family, to not take care of his spiritual life, to be in bad situations at work that he wasn't happy with, where people were just taking from him. But the outcomes could be a remarkable and fulfilled life. And so then the question becomes, well, so I have my purpose statement, now what? So you can do anything and fulfill your purpose, meaning you can be have a print shop. You can be a guide in the wilderness for hunters. You could be, anything. You could be a COO. You can use any actual technique, skill, trade, or whatever to go fulfill your purpose. But that doesn't mean that everything will naturally do that. Meaning, if you have 4 or 5 different roles, or you're heading into a role, once you have your purpose statement, here's how you use your purpose statement. You ask yourself, can I X, insert your purpose statement with this role? Can I X in this marriage? Can I X variable, insert purpose statement in my current circumstances? And if the answer is no, then you need to take massive action, right? So basically, it's key for us to know what our purpose is. And I'll say to you all listening to the podcast that I said to my friend, you haven't even begun to identify what your purpose statement is, and you need to, because, and it actually ties to something that Brandon and I were talking about. We were talking about relationships, and he already knew the answer. He didn't need to ask me, but I'm glad he asked me. He was like, so how much should I be willing to put up with in this relationship? And I said, Brandon, it depends on where you're going. If you're both headed in the same direction, any amount of struggle is worth it. It's worth the time. If you're not heading in the same direction, every last second is wasting your time. And so the same thing goes with work, or with personal circumstances, or with this organization you're a part of, or whatever. And I'm not perfect at it. I sound nice and smug and, know it all over here, but I can tell you that I'm not perfect at it. But this concept has blessed me immensely, that it becomes a criteria in guiding your life. If you're at work, or if you're in a hobby, or if you're in a relationship, or you're in a friendship, or whatever, ask yourself, does this interaction, does this role, does this work ultimately get me closer to my core purpose, my SOUL, my soul purpose? And if the answer is no, you're wasting your time. And if the answer is it's a stepping stone on the way, then keep moving with massive action. And if the answer is yes, this aligns and this accomplishes my purpose, then stay there and do a darn good job of what you're doing. And that's the key. And I'll close out this podcast spiking this down in the end zone right here. I talk a lot about fulfillment and success, right? Success, and Tony Robbins said this to me. I don't know who originated it, but success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I believe that 100%. How many people want to get to a vice president position, or general superintendent, or PM, or business owner, or whatever, and they get there and they're miserable, right? Here's what causes the misery: when what you're doing isn't aligned with your core purpose, whether you know it or not, because it creates dissonance, it creates a disconnect, it creates a gap in your mind. And that disconnect is hard to deal with, and it causes a lack of fulfillment. So if you want to fix the fulfillment and success piece, then you have to find what your core purpose is in life. Why am I here? And then make sure everything you're doing is aligned with it. And I would say, for those of you out there who work for a crappy company and feel like you're trapped by the golden handcuffs and feel like you can't leave because of a need of certainty and security and what's the other one? The significance. For those of you who feel like it's just beyond your reach, that's fine, just as long as you know that you're going to waste most of your life being miserable, and we only have one life to live, as my friend pointed out just a minute ago. So if you want to have success and fulfillment, you have to be aligning with your core purpose. So just to summarize here, ask yourself why 7 times plus or minus 3. Once you get chills or a revelation or something that where you're like, there's something to that, you may have found it. Don't discount the words. Yeah, create yourself a little litmus test of, well, if that was the only criteria, what would be the consequences of that? And it's just like the example of to improve the lives of others or to find joy in improving the lives of others, right? Both of those have very different outcomes. Once you figure out, yes, this only brings good things according to who I am. And then the question is, or you could do anything. The what you do isn't as important as why you do it. The question is what you're doing heading in that direction? And if not, you need to take massive action. I love you guys. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.